You know, I talked with Jim Hightower the other day, who's going to talk here tonight. We were talking about the free market, and he said, yeah, the free market is a great thing. We should try it sometime. We don't have a free market economy in this country anymore. And all of the environmental laws were meant, all of the environmental laws, the federal environmental laws were meant to restore free market capitalism in America by forcing actors in the marketplace to pay the true cost of bringing their product to market. And what I do as an environmental lawyer for river keepers, water keepers, and NRDC is I don't even consider myself an environmentalist anymore. I'm a free marketeer. I go out into the marketplace and I find the polluters and I say to them, we're going to force you to internalize your costs the same way that you're internalizing your profits. Because when somebody cheats the free market, all of us get cheated. It distorts the entire marketplace, and none of us gets the advantages, the benefits of the efficiency and the democracy that the free market otherwise promises our nation. And Americans have to understand that there is a huge difference between the kind of, between free market capitalism, which democratizes our nation, which makes us more efficient and prosperous, and the kind of corporate crony capitalism that has been embraced by this White House, which is as antithetical to democracy and prosperity and efficiency in America as it is in Nigeria. And you know, corporations don't want free markets and they don't want democracy. They want profits. And the best way for them to get profits is by buying politicians using this corrupt campaign finance system we have in this country, which is just a form of legalized bribery. And they capture control of the agencies and the politicians, and then they use that control to eliminate the marketplace and eliminate their competitors and privatize the commons and allow them to devour the air and water which belongs to us, the public trust assets, the commonwealth of our country, which are open to plunder by these thieves. And they get a hold of that through campaign finance, but that's a form of plunder. And ultimately, you know, I'd spoken 2 years ago to a group of farmers in Clear Lake, Iowa. And there were 1,200 farmers there, and I said something there that day, which was, I said that I was more fearful of the big corporate integrators like Smithfield and Premium Standard Farms and these other big integrators that are coming in and shattering rural communities and building these hog factories and driving the farmers off of their land and destroying their water and the air and the property values of those communities. And I said, and corrupting politicians while they do it, and eroding our democracy and bulldozing our democratic institutions. And farmers know this is going on because there is no free market left in agriculture in the United States of America. It is gone. You can't, you know, except for these farmers markets here which are trying to restore it, you can't take a pig and bring it to a slaughterhouse and sell it in the marketplace anymore. You know, that whole system is controlled by a few large corporations. And I worked in North Carolina against this industry and 15 years ago, on behalf of the Farmers Union and the big farm groups down there, 15 years ago, there were 27,500 independent hog farmers in the state of North Carolina, and today there's none left. They've been completely replaced by 2,200 hog factories, 1,600 owned by one company, Smithfield Foods. And these large corporations are coming in and emptying rural landscapes and shattering rural communities. And the Raleigh News and Observer did a 5-part series for which they won the Pulitzer Prize that showed how these corporations are coming in and corrupted the public officials in North Carolina and bought the agencies and bulldozed democracy. So these farmers knew what I was talking about. And I said that I was more fearful of the big corporate multinational integrators than I was of Osama bin Laden. And when they stood up and they gave me a 10-minute standing ovation, 1,200 farmers. But I got beat up by the Farm Bureau for the next 6 months and by the big corporate agribusiness people and all their allies in the press for 6 months for having said it. But I'll say it again, and I stand on what I said, and it's the same thing that has been said by the most visionary political leadership throughout our American history, including the Republicans. They've all said it, that, and today it's in vogue to say we should all be scared of big government and overreaching. But our leaders from the beginning of American history have warned us not so much about big government, which we also have to be careful about, but about corporate power and the excess of corporate power as the gravest threat to our democracy. When we destroy nature, we diminish ourselves. We impoverish our children. We're not fighting to preserve those ancient forests in the Pacific Northwest, as Rush Limbaugh loves to say, for the sake of a spotted owl, but because we believe that those trees have more value to humanity standing than they would have if we cut them down. And I'm not fighting for the Hudson River. For the sake of the shad, of the sturgeon, the stripers, but because I believe my life will be richer and my children and my community will be richer if we live in a world where there are striped bass and in the Hudson and shad and sturgeon, and where my children can see the fishermen out on the river in their tiny boats doing what they've been doing for generations, and touch them when they come to shore to repair their nets or to wait out the tides, and in doing that connect themselves to 350 years of New York State history and understand that they're part of something larger than themselves. They're part of a continuum. They're part of a community. I don't want my children to grow up in a world where there are no commercial fishermen left in the Hudson, where it's all Unilever in 400-ton factory trawlers 100 miles offshore strip mining the ocean, and where there are no family farmers left in America, where it's all Smithfield and Cargill and Premium Standards raising animals in factories and treating both animals and human beings with unspeakable cruelty and destroying these communities. And where we've lost touch with the seasons and the tides and the things that connect us to the 10,000 generations of human beings that were here before there were laptops, and that connect us ultimately to God. Like I said, I don't believe nature is God or that we ought to be worshiping it as God, but I do believe it's the way that God communicates to us most forcefully. And if you look at all the religious traditions in mankind's history, the central epiphany always occurs in the wilderness. Buddha had to go into the wilderness to experience self-realization and nirvana. Muhammad had to go to the wilderness of Mount Hera in 629 to wrestle an angel in the middle of the night to have the Quran squeezed out of him. Moses had to go up into the wilderness of Mount Sinai to get the commandments. The Jews had to spend 40 years in the wilderness to purge themselves of the 400 years of slavery in Egypt. Christ had to go into the wilderness for 40 days to discover his divinity. And his mentor, John the Baptist, was a man who lived in a cave in the Jordan Valley and dressed in the skins of wild beasts. And all of Christ's parables are taken from nature. I am the vine, you are the branches, the mustard seed, the little swallows, the scattering the seeds on the fallow ground, the lilies of the field. He calls himself a fisherman, a farmer, a vineyard keeper, a shepherd. The reason he did that was that's how he stayed in touch with the people. He was saying things that were revolutionary, that contradicted everything they'd heard from the literate, sophisticated people of their time, and they would have dismissed him as a quack. But they were able to confirm the wisdom of his proverbs through their own observations of the fishes and the birds. And they were able to say, he's not telling us something new. He's simply illuminating something that is very, very old, messages that were written into creation by the Creator at the beginning of time, and we haven't been able to decipher them until the prophets came and told us what they were. And that's why all of the prophets in the Quran, in the Old Testament, in the Upanishads, in the New Testament, all of them come out of the wilderness. And almost all of them are shepherds, because that daily connection to nature gives them a special access to the wisdom of the Almighty. And in our country, the wisdom always came off of the farms. And today, we are driving the nail into Thomas Jefferson's vision, the final nail in the coffin of Thomas Jefferson's vision of an American democracy rooted in tens of thousands of freeholds owned by family farmers, so that in order to make corporate profit-taking more easy and accessible to the president's campaign contributors, we are wiping out our wilderness area. We're destroying the capacity of Americans to experience nature undiminished and to experience communities, to enjoy communities that give them the same opportunities for dignity and enrichment, and the same opportunity ultimately to experience the divine, to understand who God is and therefore what our own potential is as human beings, and the values of our country and the character of our people, or the things that make us proud to be American. All of these things are things that are being squandered by this terrible, terrible, terrible administration, and we need to rise up and fight against them. This is the most important election of our lives, and I hope all of you will stand shoulder to shoulder with me and throw these people out of the White House. Thank you.